Welcome back to the Real News Network. I'm Mark Steiner. Great to have you with us. We're going to continue our conversation with Sam Gindin about the closing of the auto plants in Canada and the United States, and really focus in here on what the future could be. So when you look at the auto union movements in Canada, union movements in the United States, the flow of international capital being able to dominate everything, despite the games that Trump might play with his words. I'm curious how you see that unfolding. You talked about taking over plants as they did in the 30s when the auto workers were actually first formed. But clearly the unions have to reinvigorate and reinvent themselves in many ways, and we have to reinvent and what we mean by an economy. I mean, how do you see pushing for that? What do you see the bottom line issues are that will actually attract people to this kind of new conversation without getting overly burdensome intellectually?
Well, I think we're at a new historical moment. I mean, if people want to know what the future holds, they can just project what's been happening over the last 30 years in terms of inequality, insecurity, losing substantive democracy in terms of shaping things, what we expect things are going to be like for our kids, student debt. I mean, it's not hard to see what the future holds. It's going to be more of the same. The question is, do we want to change it? And what we're learning is, the labor movement used to think that this was all temporary. We'll ride it out. Well, that didn't happen. The labor movement thought that, well, maybe if we make some concessions, accept two-tier wages, that'll give us some security. It turned out that all that did was weaken the union. It led to people losing their confidence in the union. Then people looked to, sometimes they experimented with looking to somebody like Sanders, but what did happen in the States, what's happening in Canada, is they turned to right-wing populists who gave them simple answers, attacked the elite, and spoke to their frustrations. Well, that's being exposed right now. Now the challenge is on us. What are we going to do about it? And, what you raised is the trade union movement is fundamental to this. Sparks can come from anywhere. They can come from a new radicalized student movement. They can come from people fighting around racism. They can come from movements defending immigrants. But unless the trade union movement is there, it's hard to imagine this being sustained. So part of what this discussion about is how do you revive the labor movement? And the revival of the labor movement, I think, depends on two things. One is it has to take advantage of these kinds of moments. Advantage might not be the right word, but it has to respond to these kinds of moments in a way that doesn't just show how weak they really are because they say a lot but do nothing. So they have to actually act. I think that is critical. And there is so much frustration out there and so much appetite for change that if some decisive actions took place where people really did things like occupy plants, it would be seen sympathetically. It would give people other ideas, maybe not occupying plants, but other creative ideas. That's one thing. And the other thing we really have to talk about is we need an organized left. What happened in the 30s was related to the fact to there being parties of the working class, socialist and communist. And if the problems are so big, they can't just be solved by unions working in isolation. We're going to need to have socialist parties which have feet in the union movement, but feet also outside, and can make links with the community, and can develop larger plans, develop the skills amongst people to understand what's going on, to strategize, to debate these issues democratically, to organize, and to act. These are intimidating and almost overwhelming things, but unless we start thinking this way, all we're going to get is just a projection of what we have now. So at that level, that's the choice. Do we want to become more radical, or do we want to just continue where we are? And because the choices are so polarized, you either give in to the corporations or you have to become radical. What it means is that the radical is actually the only thing that's becoming practical. To give them subsidies doesn't work. To give them concessions doesn't work. What are you going to do? And the only alternative, what's becoming practical, is actually the radical.
And it seems in many ways that solution around the audit, there's very little you can do to stop these plants from closing and people moving out at this moment. Clearly that's going to happen, which means all these workers will be out of work. I wouldn't criticize people for trying to say, well, give us another model, or why don't you do the electric car there? I mean, they should do that, but they've made it pretty clear that they don't think we've got the power to do this, and they've got their interest. And you've got people
which
now.
have to do something else.
Now you're seeing, with whether it's the Sanders campaign and other things going on around this country, right or left, you're seeing, what you just said, you're seeing people who are accepting radical ideas because they know that what's given them now is pablum and it's not working.
Yes, and the corollary of that is that people are ready for something, and that something has to be organized so it really brings them together and gives them hope, because what your expectations are depends on what you think is possible. And what you think is possible is going to depend on what kind of structures there are that you can work through. And if you don't think you can work through your union to change things, because all your union is offering is concessions, you're not going to go there. So we have to build those things. We have to renew our unions, but we also have to start thinking about building organizational capacities in communities and also nationally in terms of political parties.
So Sam Gindin was Research Director for the Canadian Auto Workers from 1974 to 2000 and co-wrote the book, The Making of Global Capitalism, The Political Economy of the American Empire. And Sam, it's always great to hear your thoughts and ideas. Thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you with us here in The Real News.
Thanks. Great to be here.
And I'm Mark Steiner here for The Real News Network. We'll be covering this some more. Take care.